Weird and unfortunate things are happening. And no, I'm not talking about my life this time. I'm talking about the game. And honestly, I should have been talking about this game a while ago, as I said that I was going to do a video on it over a year ago. What happened? I'm not sure. Well, it's not just my fault, y'all were in on it too. Yeah, y'all heard me. Remember that poll I made last October? I was like, oh, I know you all. Y'all are just gonna vote for the RPG Maker game. But nope, I got left with Side Quest. I've been wanting to play this game for over a year, and honestly, after all this time, talk about my loss. RPG Maker VX finished in October 2020, and by this point I'm starting to form a conspiracy that all RPG Maker VX games are godlike. Like dang, I'm about to version switch myself, something's up. Y'all will be surprised, I have a lot to say about this game. But first, let's take a step back. I don't know why that's my catchphrase now. This game tells the story of a town called Daybreak, a snowy small town that is about to experience a rather weird and unfortunate thing. The mayor is on some cult stuff, and it becomes apparent that otherworldly monsters are being summoned into the town. Of note of the people here are Miriam, a recently fired secretary who's pissed and wants nothing more than to get out of Daybreak, and maybe shove a .45 down this guy's throat. Lamar, a teacher that values and protects his students, and Dorothy, one of his students. As Dorothy is called to the principal's office and seems to be in danger, she calls out to her aunt, the one and only Alicia, an ex-baseball player with psychic powers and no fear. Hearing Dorothy's call, we find her taking a ride to the supposed Daybreak, but it becomes clear that something isn't right. That it doesn't seem like anyone but her knows what Daybreak is, and even showing up, the town is nowhere, it's just a wall. Using her powers though, she finds an opening into a strange world, and after fighting some monsters, she finds herself face to face with an evocation known as Elolu, who basically possesses her with the promise of saving her niece Dorothy, aka Dottie. Now powered up, she explores the desolate town of Daybreak, this town now seemingly being merged with a world of monsters. All the while she fights, meets survivors and friends, all in a search to save her niece. Get ready for a story of monsters, possession, psychic girls, evil principals, and corrupted cultists. Get ready, because weird and unfortunate things are happening. Yeah, I guess I should put a gore warning or something, because there's some pretty gross stuff in this game that I'll be showing. Watch out! Now that we have the premise settled, I can talk more about the individual aspects of the game. I have a lot of appreciation for the art of the game, from the expressive character busts, which appear both in dialogue and even in battles, reacting to being damaged, but also the quantity of the art. Not every screen feels like a complete copy-paste of random assets everywhere. There's always something new to see. I always found myself reading all the graffiti and such on the buildings, and it adds a lot to the portions of the game that involves exploring the town. It gives Daybreak some seasoning. This goes for battles as well, with every attack and item having all these unique animations. This stuff might not seem important, but this is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be seeing the whole game, and some of these animations are so unique. Like, I love RPGs where my party can get annihilated by an attack and I can be like, whoa! That animation was cool though. Whether it be hatching a jellyfish, the goddamn silly as hell moon gift animation I never get tired of, to the tear that causes this full explosion. One of my favorites has to be Encroaching Anathema. Like, that's gotta be one of the coolest attack animations I have ever seen in an RPG. And no, I'm not showing it, because I want y'all to see it, because when you all do, I know y'all will be like, wow, that was pretty cool. Though I will have to give a complaint about Dolores Spears, because as useful as that attack is, I always find myself having to look away, because that white flash is too much. Maybe it's a small complaint, but this is an attack I used a lot. And also, trust me, I need to get nitpicky if I have to find anything I don't like about this game. And I know, this game does have a flashing light warning, but here's a warning. I'm coming down to y'all's place right now with some fresh cornbread. I don't need to, but I'm gonna, and I won't be stopped. But still, there's so much that I can say I haven't even seen all the battle animations, from skills I never got to items I never used. There's just a surprising amount to it all. Even to all the enemy designs, I can definitely tell a lot of work went into this. When it comes to music, this game makes a lot of use of licensed, free music, with a few original tracks being created for the game. So while y'all may think the music y'all be listening to while walking around the scary city of death full of monsters would be something like this, it's actually this. Yeah, I definitely can't call it scary, but I think these bumping beats are intentional. Maybe they sound out of place when fighting these monsters, but I think it fits and represents Alicia's upbeat personality and determination to find her niece. She's not the kind of horror protagonist who's afraid and running away from these monsters. She wants to kick their butts. And you know what? Good. These songs slap. I remember hearing this one song, this is a random tangent, and I was like, wow, RPG Maker VX games just have slapper soundtracks. Because I was listening to a song that I swear sounded straight out of another RPG Maker VX game, Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass. Like, it sounded like a Casey Ozzy song. So I was looking for it in the credits, but Casey wasn't listed under music. But then I found out it was a Casey song, and it does slap. Also, a fan of the boss theme. I guess an advantage of using songs from different creators not associated with the project is that you get a wide variety of battle themes, and I've always enjoyed RPGs with a bunch of different songs for their fights. I think it's good for a game like this too, I'll explain that later. But it's kinda hard to find an audible theme for this game overall. I mean, the genre is pretty consistent. I definitely might be able to get away with playing some of these songs at a party if everyone's drunk enough, but there's definitely some songs I just can't really vibe with. Like, I don't really know what the hell I'm listening to when I'm upgrading the skill tree. And I thought the voices used in the Vindom Space song was a bit corny, like that's kinda try hard. It's probably not the kind of music you'd all expect from a more horror oriented game, but once again, it fits, it jams, and some of these songs kinda sound perfect for a horror RPG game with a focus on action. And to be fair, when the game wants to be scary, the tracks used for it work, like the final boss theme. Wow. Another thing that works is the writing, for both the characters and the world. I like the amount of detail put into the world these monsters come from. In fact, I'd say it's kind of the star of the plot for me, that these evocations possessing these humans have a lot of trouble happening down in their world, with differing ideologies and plans from the inner and outer evocations. There's just a surprising amount of lore and backstory to it all. A future spacer here, I don't know why the hell I'm calling them evocations, it's probably evocations. I don't know why I called it an Elothu, it's probably Elothu. But y'all know how it is, I'm never right. Meanwhile, the player likely just sides with the main human characters, who at first don't really care about the pleas of these demons, they just want to find Dottie. But it's nice seeing over time, them being forced to open up and try to understand what's going on in this other world invading theirs, which makes for good moments of explaining to both the characters and the player. I really enjoy the main characters, both the humans and the evocations that possess them, but especially the humans. Like, Alicia was kind of annoying at first with how she kept calling her evocation, Elothu, an a-hole, though she actually ends up being right. Screw this guy, I'll get to him in a bit. But then on the other hand, Alicia just has this likable aura about her. Like, I find her oddly compelling. Like, buddy, we gotta go save Dottie. Elothu the Patient is Alicia's evocation, combining forth to boost her psychic powers over a shared enemy. And yeah, I don't like him. Just this uppity guy who looks down on everyone, and half his dialogue is just him going, "Oh, the barbaric inner evoctions. Oh, the stupid inners. Oh, those inner evoctions could never think of anything like that." After nearly every event, like, dude, we get it. You're racist. Shut up. It's not too long running around Daybreak that we encounter Miriam. And Miriam, yeah, she's definitely my favorite character. I love Miriam, just this pissed off woman in a dress with a gun. Just got fired from her job by her weirdo cult leader boss who's also the mayor of the town, and just wants to get the hell out of Daybreak, but ends up getting dragged along by this wild psychic girl on this whole journey. It can be said that the main emotional centerpiece of the story is tied to Alicia trying to save her niece, but I found a lot of the emotion to come from Miriam, the things she loses throughout the journey and the friends she makes. How she always stays strong even in the hardest moments. I like Miriam's evocation too, Faradon. His dialogue gets a laugh out of me with how to the point he is, and the full caps just implies that he's always yelling, and how he and Miriam just kind of vibe together. In the search for Dorothy, we end up going to the school, where we meet the teacher who's protective of his students, Lamar. Lamar rules. And I love how his sensible and serious personality clashes with the nonsense happening all around him. I love the relationship he has with his evocation, Ginyagu, and how his personality differs so much from this goofy old demon in him. Though I still can't tell if Ginyagu is just a happy, excitable demon, or just a condescending jerk, but if it's the former like I think it is, then he might be my favorite evocation. I think Ginyagu is just fun and neat. Wish there was more of him. He kind of gets the least attention I feel out of all them, but I always love the "you're so clever." Also, depending on y'all's pronouns, this may or may not be a pretty godlike reaction image. Just due to plot, Dorothy doesn't get as much attention as the other characters, you know, being captured and all that, but I think she's pretty cool. I like how happy she is that she has psychic powers, calling herself a magical girl, and it's nice seeing her stand up and have more confidence in herself and her powers, not being afraid of these monsters that used to scare her. Eason Years with Dorothy, just kind of like a less outwardly jerky version of Eladu, knowledgeable, but pretty cold-hearted at points. I like this cast. I just like these stories of these different characters coming together and growing to like each other, seeing how relationships develop and the like. But y'all may have noticed how much more I had to say on the human characters rather than the evocations. For as much as a focus is on the world of the evocations, I can say these four are pretty one note. Like, they really just have one character trait that represents a lot of their personality, and with how they stick with the characters, they feel more like narrators explaining the world and game mechanics rather than actual characters. And at points they just kind of stop talking, like I legit forgot that they are part of the party, which the game even makes fun of at a moment where it's like, "Hey, y'all haven't been talking, you cool?" And they're just like, "Oh yeah, we're just chilling." And it's like, I guess to be fair, juggling a party of 8 different characters in the same place is hard when it comes to dividing up dialogue, and I don't mind the focus on the human characters. In some ways, the evocations, despite how closely tied they are, feel more like side characters, and that's fine. Now, one thing I really enjoyed is the dialogue itself. This game does something rare that I've seen few horror games do, called characters actually reacting to events. Like, there are just so many horror games and games in general where something strange and surprising happens and the characters just have no reaction or dialogue to it. It's at points like that where it stops feeling like the player is controlling a character and that they're just controlling a camera, walking around and showing them, the actual main character, the story. And I think it's stuff like this that really helps these characters stick out and remind the player that they're experiencing every step of this with them. Weird and unfortunate things are happening is really about all the small details coming together and making big impacts. Also, speaking of small, I'm just going to call this game Wata for now. That title is too long, okay? You all may think that with everything I've mentioned so far, this game would probably fall on its face when it even comes to attempting horror, with these unafraid characters and jamming tunes. And yeah, as in yeah, you all are wrong. The atmosphere of exploring Daybreak in itself is pretty good, once again with all this graffiti, conversations with the few survivors left, and just the art in general displaying this empty town that not too long ago was perfectly fine and full of people. But then the players get these moments where they find these strange key homies scampering about. And these are luck based, by the way. The player might not actually find them in the areas that they appear in. And players just get whisked away to these subworlds of varying themes. And some of these are legit the scariest part of the game for me. Like, I think the ambience and pacing of the one I got about the guy and the thing locked in the basement was handled so well. And the one with the masks, oh my. Typically, these areas have some really good items to get, like permanent stat upgrades and the like, but the mask area got to me so badly that I didn't care. I was just trying to get the hell out. And if the horror gets me to the point where I don't care about powerful items with long-lasting effects, then yeah, I can say the horror was done well, like, great stuff. These subworlds can go on for a bit too. Like, I'll be exploring the town and suddenly I'm in this other world for like 10 minutes. Like, I was in this white world where all these people live, talking about some mountain outside of their town where people go to ascend or something, and I thought that was so intriguing. It felt like I was in a different game. Then there are subworlds where I kinda am in a different game, like this Dragon Quest one. I don't want to spoil these all, and due to the RNG nature of it, I likely missed a lot of these, but they're so cool. This is gonna be random, like really random, but it gave me the same vibe I liked about the Yokai Watch games. Just a large focus on exploring these open towns being invaded by monsters, with random events occurring and potentially whisking players away to different places where they can get items. I just really enjoy it. Also really enjoy all the areas with references, from stuff to other horror games or other RPG Maker games. Quite a few I've actually talked about here. Like, I'd recognize this prism from anywhere. And these two cute old spirits, come on. And these two gamers? Immaculate. But also a lot of horror stuff in general, like internet horror stuff. I'm out here fighting the likes of stuff like Smile Dog, these Jeff the Killer like dolls. The toy area really goes in with Mr. Bucket. I wasn't even surprised when I saw the evil wand. Like, I think it's cool. It's never distracting either. There's probably a ton of references with the graffiti on the wall that I missed, but it's never expected for the player to know any of this. Like, if the players know, they know. If they don't, then it's just a neat decoration. It's just part of the town. I really enjoyed the toy area. I think it's just cute. I like the story in general, and the pacing of it all works so well. There's just so many gotcha moments. Like, you all will never guess how and when this game ends. And all the different areas always kept me on surprise. Y'all will get taken to some wild places. Another thing I'm kind of curious about is, well, okay. So the evoctions and such use pronouns. I know what y'all are thinking, oh god, here we go. But trust me, this won't be long. So early on, Elethu says that pronouns don't really apply to them, but doesn't really care regardless. But then later on, he's calling Isanir she, her. And I don't know, I just think that's interesting. Like, do some monsters bother with those? How come some monsters actually speak the same language as the main characters? One of the neat things about this game is that there was a lot of dialogue hidden behind a different language. And with enough notes and just exploration, it's actually possible to translate these messages and learn the language. I sure as hell couldn't figure it out. But I ended up getting a code to translate it, and I actually would really love to play this game again to see all the dialogue I couldn't read before. There's actually a lot. It warrants a second playthrough, and the stuff being said could actually answer some questions and change my view on the story. Overall, from the writing to the characters, the visuals, and the world itself, I think it's all done pretty well. I really enjoyed the amount of variety from all the different aspects of this game, the battle songs, the areas you explore, and the animations. There's just a lot to see and do in this game. And speaking of a lot, I think it's time I talk about the gameplay. And buddy, this part of the video, yeah, it's gonna be a lot. Wada is one of those games I love talking about from a gameplay perspective, just because of all the ideas it introduces to create such a unique experience. Like, I have so much to say, and honestly, I'm a little excited just thinking about where to start. So let's begin with the big one, the battle system. Standard turn-based, nothing special about that, but there's a lot of ideas at play. Starting off is the elements. You all may notice by enemies' names are icons. This is the enemy type. Told through these excellently explained attack descriptions, nearly all attacks are effective and ineffective towards certain types of enemies. This corresponds to the 3 elements as well, terror, fear, and rage, which for some reason of all the things this game teaches you about, these 3 elements aren't there, but maybe it's so you all can discover on your own. It may seem complicated having to learn all these symbols and such, but it's really easy. Like, do y'all think I memorized the name of any of these? As far as I'm concerned, that's stick, that's teeth, that's eye, and that's rock. All you have to do is just pick the attack with the icon matching the enemy. It's very simple, and it's such an interesting idea. I feel like a lot of RPGs typically hide the elemental weaknesses of enemies, encouraging the waste of a turn on something like a scan skill, or to simply guess. But this always has a secondary effect of me not really wanting to use elemental attacks at all, because if I end up using a big attack and I see that I just healed the enemy, well then yeah, that was a f***ing waste. You could say it's a risk system, rewarding the player for experimenting, but why interact with it at all? I don't know. Maybe just having elemental affinities near enemies' names is the way to go. It really does have an impact on battles. I can't get away with just mashing out attacks, because the character's standard cost-free attacks might end up doing nothing to an enemy. All things but a couple specialty attacks are effective and ineffective against different enemy types. It actually encourages the player to use their skills, because if they don't, battles are just going to last forever, and chances are, the player characters are going to lose a lot of health, so use that MP up. It doesn't give the players an option to play the game, it forces them to interact with this system and have fun. And buddy, you all better have fun. And hell, characters like Alicia have MP regen by default, alongside drain skills to accommodate her bat skills costing HP. If the player plays things well, even when they have to use their resources, they can still come out on top. But in a twist, players do encounter enemies that don't have their type labeled, typically bosses at first, but as the game goes on, this becomes more common. And yeah, the game even admits this is trial and error. But I think it's a kind of neat deduction game, using different skills to see what this mysterious enemy resists and is weak to, and being able to determine what the enemy type is just from that without the game ever telling you. It works because the players don't have the choice to not interact with it. All their skills are quote unquote elemental, they have to do this. Y'all can say it's a bit of both worlds, but it's never too punishing. There aren't any enemies that like absorb certain attacks or anything like that. These things combined create a system where I always had to play fights differently, which I always think is important for RPGs, to make it so the same strategy won't always work. There will be times where encounters favor certain characters' attacks, while other characters should just lean back, play support, and focus on curing status effects or giving buffs. It creates a system that constantly shifts how these characters play every fight. It's dynamic. If that wasn't enough, there are skills that have area effects, which is such an interesting idea. Depending on enemy formation, some attacks have zones that can potentially hit multiple targets, meaning that depending on the formation itself, the player may be encouraged to change what skills they want. Skills have other modifiers to separate them besides just these area effect ones. So, while it may seem that they're all the same with how most character skills all target the same type of enemy, skills usually have secondary factors such as status effects or cooldowns. It's such a well done system that adds so much to the combat. Like, the players spend at least 4 to 5 hours of game time with just Miriam and Alicia, just 2 characters. Most RPGs with 4 party members just give the full party within the hour, and what this shows to me here is confidence. Another genius idea that straight up blew me back is how status effects are handled. I feel like most traditional RPGs handle status effects in 2 ways. 1, there's a bunch of different status effects, and most need certain items and skills to cure them. Or 2, F it, just give them a single item or skill that heals all status effects, with some games starting with 1 and ending as 2. Wada definitely leans more towards the latter. Okay, maybe I should just call the game weird. Or weird hap. Yeah, okay, weird hap. What I mean by what I just said is that status effects are color coded. Check the borders. Yellow ones are less intense, easy to cure. Red ones can be a huge hindrance, hard to cure. And purple ones are uncurable and extremely dangerous, mostly going away with time. And yes, green ones are positive status effects. Thanks for the question, now please sit down. But what this leads to are items and skills that only heal yellow status effects, or more powerful ones healing both red and yellow, which I think is a good idea. Like, I can't believe I never thought of it. It simplifies things while still allowing a ton of different status effects. The game makes sure to spam statuses. Every fight you will get hit by some status effect. Most enemy attacks have a status effect associated with them, once again forcing the player to play this game. And the two different curable categories create situations where certain characters may be knocked out, and I have no way of curing something like a red status effect without using a rare and limited item. And I'll get to how items are handled in a bit. It really just takes the idea of number 2 and just adds a little bit of seasoning to it. It blends well with the attacks and enemy types in perfectly adding depth while not being complicated. That's a darn good idea. Something I don't get to talk about too often is enemy design. And let me tell y'all, this game has some memorable enemies. And I don't just mean that visually, I mean that in gameplay context. How certain enemies such as healers have naturally higher priority levels for takeout, but thanks to the type and zone skills, priorities can get shifted. Like, I could single target this healing enemy, but I don't have much for attacks that they are weak to, so I could instead take out the enemies clustered up that I'm super effective against. It's a small thing that most people don't consider when it comes to RPG design, but it's these small things that I find the most engaging. The playable characters are all unique in what they can do, from how they attack to the types that they're effective against and the ones that they aren't. It defines them. There's a real satisfying feeling when I finally get a new character and I can suddenly deal with these certain enemy types that will give me trouble throughout the entire game. So let's talk about them. Alicia can be seen sort of as a mixed attacker, having physical oriented bat skills that cost HP, and psychic powers that can heal, cleanse status effects, absorb, and attack enemies. She's a real everything kind of character, and one that I can see a lot of people building different. Miriam is super simple, but maybe that's just because I didn't bother with unlocking skills with her for at least 3/4 of the game. A lot more heavy on status effect skills and strong physical attacks with her guns. She can actually handle all enemy types, as her gun skills allow the player to use rare ammo that can be found to fire with. These attacks are powerful, but it does cost a resource that may be more ideal to save for heavier encounters. I really like her quick shot ability. Enemies have HP bars in this game, which really helps the player divide up attacks and use game knowledge to know not to waste an attack that could potentially overflow onto an enemy that will resist it. But using quick shot to snipe out enemies before they can strike ends up saving a lot of HP, which is huge for the early game. It synergizes well with Miriam's incredibly useful poison skill she gets for free, which will leave enemies at 1 HP, free to follow up with a quick hit. Also, it kinda sucks I didn't get her latest skills at first, because the one that lets her go twice for several turns is really fun. Lamar is my favorite character gameplay wise, and he's the MVP. So what I'm saying is that I dumped all my stat ups into him, which I kinda regret because he basically doesn't use the attack stat. Lamar represents a major shift in the game that I'll explain later, but he's a pure mage. He has a really interesting mechanic in that the books he equips for weapons have unique skills associated with them, so depending on what you got currently equipped, Lamar can do some different things. Some of this is powerful stuff that drastically changes how he's played, to the point where even getting future books that have better stat ups, I spent most of the game with one of the first books I got, the one that gives Lamar the skills of Divine Breath, a quick full party heal, and Mystic Boost, a pretty nice damage and regen upgrade for Lamar. I think having the choice to stay back and use previous books that the player prefers is really cool. Early on, the difference is only that future books give more attacks, and that doesn't really matter for Lamar. But I'm kind of sad that later on the books start giving magic attack stat ups, because then it kind of tells the player to just get on with it and equip these later books. Some other memorable books include the one that gives the skill Sublime Rain, which is a full party HP MP regen. It rules and is one of my favorite abilities. To this one, I found that due to where it's located and how I got it, I can say most people likely didn't find it, but it allows players to ultra charge Lamar's damage to hilarious degrees, but his HP is slowly getting sapped. However, this book's secondary skill is that of a drain, and if the player builds up enough HP regen, it's possible to negate the sap. It's really cool, and these two different skill sets show how Lamar can be support or carry. He also has some barriers alongside his healing skills, so I think in some cases he was meant to play more of a support role, but I kinda just never bought any of the barrier skills besides the one in order to move on in the skill tree. But y'all know what? Here's the part where I start pushing my agenda. Yeah, I'm on my weapon switching BS. Imagine if this game let you swap weapons mid-combat. Yeah, imagine a Lamar that can drop a Sublime Rain and then swap out books and start blood boosting. That would be broken, but it'd be really fun too, and potentially give more purpose to some of the books that I was carrying around. If I want secondary books that I could swap to for a moment depending on how an encounter's going. There's one last book I want to mention, and I think it is proof that me and Unity, the creator, we understand and may have the same idea on what fun is. But I'm going to talk about that book later, just remember it. Okay, we gotta move on from Lamar. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but Dorothy does join the party. She's potentially the most powerful character, but she's extremely fragile. The true mage. She can basically take out any type of enemy with her skills, very versatile. But once again, she's super fragile. But that's okay. The way I built these characters, everyone was getting folded like a piece of paper. Besides Lamar. I'll explain myself later. I really like the mechanics she has with Alicia. Y'all will understand what I mean if y'all played the game. But she also has a skill that charges over time. It's super powerful and it gives a full party heal. Y'all may think to save this super powerful charge skill for a boss. But how about you save it for when I'm kicking your ass? And what I'm trying to say is the same thing that the game says. If the players never use it, then they might as well never have the skill to begin with. Plus, with how long battles are in this game, it's likely possible to get it back if the player opens the fight with it. Like Miriam, she also has skills relating to items obtained throughout the game. I basically never used them except on hard bosses, but once I started trying to use and cycle through them, it kind of drastically changes how Dorothy plays. It's neat. So, y'all might have noticed how I was talking about building and unlocking certain skills. What's that all about? Well, sit down and watch this. Boom! Okay, maybe that's not that surprising. I kind of already mentioned that this game had a skill tree system, but this one's really good. Everyone's tree is different, consisting of different passive buffs, HP and MP stat ups, and skills. Y'all will actually be pretty surprised what I decided to focus on in the end thanks to these different choices. The player uses these coin things called obols to buy them, and they're shared between all characters. I find the giving out of obols from exploration and battle to be handled extremely well. I was always thirsting to get back to that skill tree that's nicely spaced throughout save points, and it dynamically changed the characters for me. Y'all could go all in on Alicia. I ignored her bat skills till the final few hours of the game, and I could have gotten her final powerful full party attack skills super early on. I saved up for it, but I thought it was kinda lame, so I just saved up for when Lamar came. Y'all might think that it's okay, right? The player will eventually get everything on the skill trees, it'll all work out. And anyone who played this game, let's all laugh in unison at that statement, because let me tell y'all, you all will not get everything on these trees. I was collecting obols from the beginning to the very end, 22 hours later. I will say there was a point that I ended up being pretty satisfied with everything, even if I didn't get everything. And yeah, if any of y'all did get everything, then y'all grinded, but I ain't judging. So needless to say, it was very nicely balanced. I feel like a lot of games would have messed this part up, given players too much too early, but it ended up just being another engaging piece of the game that kept me going, encouraged me to fight, encouraged me to explore. And hey, let's talk about that exploration. It's handled pretty well. When outside in Daybreak, players get this large open world to explore, full of secrets and differing paths, maps to help you all out, and collectibles to find for optional content. And trust me baby, I went out of my way to see all of it. Typically in these open areas, encounters are handled with a bar. Once it fills up, it's fight time. And I think the idea is that people are supposed to enjoy this mechanic. Okay, that was kinda mean. I don't like the encounter bar. It turns yellow once you over-leveled enough. That's nice. And it lets players prepare and know when an encounter is going to start. Well, y'all can see my problem the second I learned of this mechanic. Suddenly, I don't want to explore anymore. I'm making sure every step is optimal. I feel this extreme pressure, like every little thing I do matters, because this bar is leaning over me. And it's not even the fact that the encounters are handled this way. I remember being fine with, quite honestly, the only other game that I've seen do this, Legend of Dragoon. But the thing is that that game had a cursor that switched colors. It was vague. As I said, I don't have a problem with the idea. I have a problem with this schmacky right here. I wish all my problems would be goddamn cured if I could turn this bar off. Cause it just felt so stressful. There's these spirit ball things too that refill HP and lower the bar, so it kind of gives that Pac-Man sensation. But I kind of wonder if these things decreasing the bar is supposed to encourage me to not get into fights. Like, I don't know, I'm getting mixed signals here. Honestly, after an hour, I became pretty used to it, so this complaint is a bit overblown. But I'm not sure if I can ever say I liked it. Though I can understand why it exists, and I'll get to that in a bit. On the flip side, in more focused areas like dungeons, encounters are on screen. And I don't know if I'm on my anti-random encounter stuff, though I guess these bar encounters are anything but random. What I'm trying to say is that I found the on-screen encounters to be really enjoyable. I mean, some of the time the on-screen enemies are super fast and basically impossible to avoid, or slow and laughable. But maybe I just have self-control. I know when I need to fight, but sometimes I just want to focus on exploring, pick and choose my fights. Like, yeah, I feel like engaging with this part of the game at the moment, and I'll walk into a battle. And honestly, for a game like this, that's important. Y'all know what? Can we talk about that? This game has an interesting situation with its battles. If the least engaging non-boss encounters are just mashing the action button until it ends, then the most has to be this game. We out here checking enemy types, curing statuses, healing up our MP before the battle ends. Every normal encounter feels like a boss fight. I mean from the first one to the last. Maybe it's because I was playing on difficulty 3 out of 4, but I got folded within the first 10 minutes of this game. This is like the fastest this has ever happened to me. What a wake up call. Because in most RPGs I rarely if ever game over. I honestly don't think that there are any encounters in this game outside of the first 20 minutes that can be won by just mashing normal attacks. Every fight is full attention, because if players aren't focused, they're just going to lose it. And I mean full attention for 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Every fight took that long, and don't get me wrong, I loved it. This is the reason why the encounter bar was used, because if random encounters were just being spammed, that crap would be tiring. But still, even with that, maybe there should have been more spacing in between fights. Listen, I'm not that good at memorization, and I promise y'all, every time I finished a fight and returned back to the overworld, I thought to myself, what am I doing? Who am I? Where am I? Did I eat today? Maybe this is just an extreme situation. It's like being told to write an essay, but every minute y'all get taken away to fist fight someone for 3 minutes, and then y'all can come back to the essay. Like, even though I can view the map on nearly every screen in the larger areas, I kinda wish the maps were just inventory items, though I can understand why they aren't. This might be a rare case though. My memory is kinda laughable. I guess the weird part is that I'm still not entirely sure if this is all a complaint, because I was still having fun. And don't say I can just run from fights, because if that run fails, then the fight is basically over for me. I think it's just an HP thing. Quite commonly, I had a single focus target an enemy for several turns, and a lot of these fights have like 3 to 5 enemies coming at you. I suppose it's my fault for playing on a higher difficulty. I assume here that the difficulties are just percentage stat-ups for the enemies, but I don't know. I felt the difficulty really sold the vibe of the first few hours of the game. I'll explain that in a bit. I will say though, legitimate complaint, these dark areas where I can't see where I'm going, mixed with the encounter bar or super fast on-screen enemies, that's toxic. I generally did not like these areas. Like, buddy, if I wanted to play an RPG where I can't see where I'm going and have no idea where to go, I'll just go play my game. So with that, and what I just said about the battles, y'all might be thinking that this game is prone to becoming very exhausting. And, well, y'all are wrong. Stop chiming in with your observations, gamer, and watch this. Something amazing about this game is when I went back to look at my gameplay sessions, they were consistently pretty long, at least for me. Like nearly every time I stopped playing this game, it's because I had work to do. I had to stop. Except for that one area with like the calming music. I heard that music and my mind was like, ain't this the meditation stuff you listen to when you need to sleep? And I was like, oh true. And that I just got hit with the realest sleep status effect from that. Like buddy, this happened twice. But what I'm trying to say is that this game's pacing is otherworldly. Actually expertly done. Besides the game being split up into sections completely different from one another, I'll explain that later, I promise, just please be patient with me. This game has a really well executed formula. I spend a couple hours exploring the city, then an hour or so in a linear dungeon, maybe some more city exploration, then once I reach the next place in the story, and I'm ready to save and quit for the day, like okay, I've had enough of gameplay for now. Bam! Suddenly, the game swaps out characters, new scenarios, new ideas being introduced, and suddenly, I'm like, oh, okay, let's play some more, this is interesting. This game always keeps things fresh, whether it be these new scenarios, wild areas, or introducing new party members, having a whole section dedicated to them, and luckily the gameplay is so engaging that just a single party member fighting is still fun. It's magical. And every party member obtained represents a shift in the story. This is what I've been building towards. Here's the lid flipper. With just Alicia, everything's still new. The player doesn't know what they're up against. Then they get Miriam and they spend the next 4 hours walking around and barely surviving the city, overwhelmed, scrounging up and relying on item heals because the game deliberately does not give the player a heal spell for outside of battle. But then after all this, Lamar shows up with that heal skill, and suddenly, the player's getting the hang of things. Then, when Dorothy joins, the player is no longer weak and barely surviving on the streets. They're powerful and capable. They can handle any enemy type and have a multitude of options to do so, and they're ready to take this fight to the boss. It's something you all have to play to understand, but there is a tangible difference in feel. It's kinda incredible just how much of an impact each party member has. And it all really ties back to how fun the combat in general is. I don't want to stop playing now. I want to see what this character can do. And then I want to see what this character can do with these other characters that I've been using. I mean, hell, I'm in a new area to explore too. I'm rejuvenated. And what I thought about throughout all of this is just the level of expertise being played here. Like, this game was clearly made by someone who not only loves RPGs, they know how to make them, and they know how to use RPG Maker. And honestly, I love to see it. It's actually kind of funny I compliment the pacing, because on the other hand, it can arguably be a bit too fast. I feel like some lines would hit a bit harder and such if there was some pauses. Maybe that's asking for too much, but the beginning was especially, no pun intended, weird about it. You start the game and the title music keeps playing to the first cutscene. You can call this a smooth transition, but it just felt jarring. And then it's this rapid fire, look at all these characters, town doesn't exist? Whoa,
Demon World. Fight. Demon possesses main character? What? Here's some tutorials. Here's some more tutorials. Read. Bam. Flashback. It feels like I'm being thrown in the blender. Give me like a slow fade or some time to think about all this. I wouldn't call this a complaint, rather than just an observation. Listen, when it comes to actually finding things I can say against this game, it's gonna have to get nitpicky just so I can talk about something. So, by now, I definitely know what you all are thinking. What the hell? Spacey has been talking about this gameplay for a while now, but it hasn't talked about how equipment works yet. Is this a Spacey soundy video? Spacey, blink 5 times if you're okay. And buddy, watch out. Calm down, gamester. Because that's what I'm going to talk about now. And for good reason, because I get to talk about this extremely silly build I went for in this game. I love RPGs that are freeform enough that I can just sit down and tell y'all what silly plan I went with throughout it all. And trust me, what I did for this one was wild. So every character has 4 equipment slots, weapons, which are pretty self-explanatory, with each of the 4 characters having their own dedicated weapon. Next is body, and then 2 charms, which are mostly universal to everyone. They can be switched around between the characters. Body is more focused on sustain and bigger numbers, typically being your main source of defense and magic defense. While charms can still raise those stats, they're typically more focused on side things, such as resisting statuses. Though of course there's also body armor dedicated to raising power instead of defense, which is definitely that kind of guerrilla gameplay I strive for. Okay, alright. So I had a big game plan throughout the game, and it all started at the school section. I ended up going to a shop where I saw these charms. Meet Greenheart. What does it do? Increases max HP. I am of strong belief that max HP is the best stat in this game. So I doubled up on green hearts for every character. Legit lasted for most of the game. Few charms challenged the power of the green heart. Luckily, there weren't any crit modifiers in this game. In fact, there is a luck stat, but it only shows up on the level up screen. It's like a phantom stat. However, one challenger approached. The magic 8-ball. I never saw it coming, but the temptation was too much. The magic 8-ball basically gave the equipped character a random buff unique to the item at battle start. And baby, you all know how I love reactive randomness. So I stuck it on Alicia, and literally left it on her for the rest of the game. As far as I'm concerned, it's part of Alicia's character. Because depending on what buff I got, I'd play differently, which is the kind of randomness I love. Speed up, I can focus on healing, cleansing, and sniping enemies. Attack up or HP regen, I'll go physical this fight, using Alicia's skills that cost HP. Mind up or psi regen, let's use some psychic powers. Hell, sometimes she comes in battles with a rainbow, which is basically every buff, which felt really cool when she got that on more emotionally charged boss battles. It was as if the character was going trance like it's Final Fantasy IX. I feel like this item was made for a character as open and versatile as Alicia. I'm kinda sad I slept on her bad abilities for so long, because I ended up liking those a lot more than her magic, even though I didn't get her final psychic skill. Moving on, Miriam and Lamar. This is where the green heart plane came to play. 2 words I shall speak that will shatter the earth. Heed thee. Health regen. Yeah, that was the play. Get health to ridiculous degrees and just get sustain off regen. Sure, our defense will be awful, but ideally we'll just heal it all back the next turn. There's a lot of ways to get regen in this game. I wanted to see what I could build with that, and I'm glad the game was freeform enough to allow me to do it. The fact that there was a point where I had to struggle on whether or not I should keep this beginning piece of armor that didn't give a lot of defense compared to this later equipment I just got, because this beginning piece of armor had a 5% HP regen, is a sign of equipment being handled well. It encourages me to think, it allows me to make decisions. Hell,
I didn't want to replace this gun I got with Miriam because it had regen also. But building towards regen was so much fun, because it just led to these moments of me getting excited when I found new HP buffing equipment, stacking it with the green hearts, and moments like, whoa, dungeon dev dude? Ah, hell yeah, D3, love that guy. Anyways, what's in here? Oh yeah, baby. We're hitting 4 digits by the end game. This attention really shifted to Lamar, because I was already giving him all the permanent stat up items, including HP ups. My new goal was to get him to 4 digits by the end of the game, and I was determined. This also meant leveling the expensive HP stat ups on the skill tree, which also led to most of the characters not having a lot of skills throughout the whole game. Like, I was rocking the 2-skill Miriam like a champ. And maybe in some ways I didn't see much value in a lot of the skills. If it wasn't Dorothy, then the skills would have the same weakness targeting, which was kind of a mistake on my part, because even though my Lamar still became an absolute menace, if I had his later skills, dude would have been out here one-shotting enemies. Dorothy and Alicia really fell towards the paper side of things. Like, they did not make it through most fights, and I'm honestly not sure why. I built the defenses as high as I could, which is what made me realize that max HP really is just a stat to focus on. I really had to make a tough decision between having support Lamar with Sublime Rain giving everyone regen, or offensive Lamar carrying with damage, because with offensive Lamar I didn't really have a support. Like, who was supporting? Lamar's the healer. But yeah, I can definitely say I created quite the unbalance with my party. It was kinda nasty. Like, I'm glad I don't stream these games because this gameplay must have been frustrating to watch. But on the other hand, wild silly builds like this are fun and I love going for this stuff. So, you all may be wondering, did I hit the 4 digits on Lamar? Well, before that, I want to talk about something final about this gameplay. This is going to come sudden, and it may be a little scary, but consider the following. Weird and unfortunate things are happening is survival horror. Farther pointedly, Silent Hill. And I know y'all are screaming and crying, thinking that I've magical girl transformed into a gaming journalist, but hear me out. I'm not talking about any Silent Hill either, I'm talking about Silent Hill 1. Just think about it, exploring a snowy town full of demons and cults doing human sacrifices. The snowy town having all these cracks and openings in the ground on the road, with maps showing all these areas with notes. I mean...
Have you seen a little girl, just turned 7 last month? Short, black hair.
Come on. And the player also ends up going to school and through the sewers. Okay, I guess most towns have those, but still. Also, buddy, that's literally the Floros. Do I still have the clip?
Here, the Flauros, a cage of peace. It can break through the walls of darkness.
Oh crap, wrong one. Isn't it amazing that all this time later this joke still isn't funny? This isn't a bad thing, because Silent Hill 1 is my favorite one. Like, honestly, Unity, I appreciate your taste. Though there is some Silent Hill 2 references for the gamers out there. And calm down on the crackers. I'm not saying this game is directly Silent Hill. There is a lot different. I mean, Harry wasn't getting possessed by any demons giving him magical powers. That's for sure. But I mean in the coolest way. Through gameplay. Take the first 4 to 5 hours of this game, where the player only has Miriam and Alicia, exploring this destroyed, desolate town, fights with enemies resulting in damage taken, healing with extremely limited healing items after battles, which also visually remind me of the healing items from Silent Hill 1. Not the point, but the way these items are handed out is excellent. This isn't the kind of game where I'm rolling around with 99 potions ready to heal after every fight. It's always about resource management, long stretches with no or limited heals. I can't keep going all out in these stretches because I need to conserve my MP, aka my ammo, because if I run out, then fights just got a lot harder. I don't think there's ever a time that the player can buy healing items. I think it's all obtained through enemy drops and exploration. Well, how about Miriam's actually limited ammo? That for a good portion is not only her only other choice to even battle against certain enemy types, but the exclusive choice for the whole party to deal with certain enemy types. Do I risk using MP in order to reduce the HP I'll lose from fights being prolonged? I've never had an RPG challenge me in that way. That's the survival horror way, isn't it? Balancing ammo and health, or in this case, MP and health. I've noticed that you all have issued a challenge by stating that in survival horror, it's ideal to escape fights without taking damage, and how that isn't possible in an RPG. But in Weird Hap, it is. In these first 4 to 5 hours, there is a deliberate choice to have no healing skills to heal outside of battles. The player has to recover with their limited items after encounters. But there are a lot of skills, ranging from regen to straight up heals, that can allow recovery in battles. If the player plays things well, they can heal back all of their damage by the battle end, as if they took no damage. The player can come out of fights with more health than they started it with, and that is so fascinating. I truly believe this is not accidental. I have full faith that Unity and anyone else who touched this gameplay knew what they were doing, and god dang it, it was done well. Which makes the gameplay all the more fresh when the player eventually does get Lamar, and just how much everything gets shifted with the fact that he can heal outside of battle, and how it really gives the feeling of coming to terms with the threat as the group prepares to overthrow it. I guess what I'm trying to say overall is that this game rules, and y'all should check it before I check y'all. And to finish up my game journalist arc, weird and unfortunate things are happening truly is Silent Hill meets Yokai Watch. The game's dope. There's a lot of ways to approach it, and a lot of fun to be had gameplay wise, from the strategic fights to the exploration of areas. I thought navigating a lot of these areas such as the school was pretty fun, and just learning these layouts. And hey, if y'all are into both RPGs and survival horror stuff, then that's just a bonus. In some ways, that's part of the reason I've been interested in going through and talking about all these RPGs, to see what they do, and see the ways that people handle all these different mechanics of a traditional RPG. So games like these that introduce all these ideas fresh to me are so cool. It's eye-opening stuff, and it's the kind of stuff that I want to talk about. Hey, y'all mind if I talk about some cool spoiler stuff real quick? Y'all know how it is. Just wanted to talk about some neat in-game stuff, things I missed, and yes, even answering the question of if I really did get Lamar to 4 digits. So stay back, unless if y'all just don't care. Alright? Yeah. I think it's really cool this game constantly pulls the rug under the player. Like, oh, y'all thought that was the end of the game? Y'all thought that message saying that there's no going back from here meant that we were at the end game? That's the halfway point. I love when games do that. I remember playing something like Final Fantasy VI for the first time and actually thinking I was at the end of the game with this portion here. I was more fresh on RPGs then, but even now this still got me. Even the final dungeon with this massive area split into these different sections to run around in is so cool, and it just blows me away that the amount of content and tile sets used for all of this, like everything done just for that rocking Commodore 64 area, that ruled. Though I'm not sure how much the player gets limited if they didn't collect all the cards beforehand in the previous areas, gathering these tickets to give to this dapper homie. Maybe it just locks up some of the ultimate gear. So yeah, anyways, I beat the final boss, right? And we get this pretty ominous ending that I feel like is setting up for a potential sequel? I might know Unity is currently working on another game for another one of her universes, but I interpret this as a twist with the Evocations being evil all this time. Jerks. Also, when I talked about that line at the end that could have used a pause, it's this one here. That goodbye daybreak kinda came off as not impactful. I'm sorry, I'm a huge nerd, this isn't really an issue. But here's a huge issue. I made it to the credit screen and the game asked me if I was satisfied to stop playing. And buddy, if you all saw the final boss footage earlier, you all would see that Lamar's HP was not over 4 digits. So no, I wasn't satisfied, and that was legit my only reason for going back in. To be fair, I could have obtained it earlier, but the Lamar book I was using had a skill that would supercharge Lamar at the cost of his psi per turn, so I needed to change my equipment to give him some EMP regen. I also kind of preferred Blood Boost, but to my surprise, there's actually a good amount more to this game in this sort of post-game situation where they put you before the final boss. Like, I completely forgot about this whole gate leading towards hell, and now I could buy the key and open it. I stumbled my way to find the gate to hell again. I kinda got lost, which I'm sure y'all are like, wow, Spacey, shouldn't you know your way by now? And yeah, buddy, home sweet home, right? So this is the bonus post-game dungeon, and I got a pretty good amount to say, but before that, crowning moment. Yeah, baby, we hit the 4 digits. Meanwhile, Alicia and Dorothy now get slept every battle because I didn't bother with upgrading their HP. That's the stuff. They also had that equipment that double drops, ovals, experience, etc. So I was basically investing my characters for the future in the post-game final dungeon. Huh. Lamar was basically invincible by this point. Like, his HP regen was hilarious, though he wasn't totally immune to some bosses, and status effects on him could still hurt. Hell is pretty long, and kinda toxic at points. Like, the encounter bar is always red, and this water area is a nightmare for the darkened screen and the fast enemies. Actually, side note, I don't think this place is called Hell. I think the key was called Hell's Key, but it leads to Mako. I think that's where we're at, Mako. Yeah, not quite, Spacey. It's called Makio, not Mako. And this is the last minute, so now I just gotta go crappily dub every time I say Mako with Makio, so get ready for that. Makio. Kinda weird. And I got taken to all these different places with all these hallucinations depicting all these what if bad endings. Like, I got this one here with Alicia dying in her car crash, which I think is a reference to the bad ending in Silent Hill 1, though it is in reference to how she got into a car crash on her way to Daybreak, which makes me wonder if she heard Dorothy's cry for help and was like, what the hell, and crashed, or if she was just so focused on saving Dorothy that she accidentally crashed in that 300 kilometers per hour type thing. I really like how this is all handled story-wise, as the characters have no reason to enter this place, so as they are now guided down here, the evocations complain as the characters stay silent, giving the implication that the player is now taking full control over these characters' thoughts and actions, like they no longer react to things, which I think is a really neat idea to handle a bonus dungeon like this. There's some new gear here, but quite a bit of it doesn't compare to the card equipment I got earlier, which I think is a good idea, still rewarding the player for getting all the cards in the early game, but still giving players who may have missed them equipment that they can still use. However, do you all remember how I said that there was a special book for Lamar that I wanted to talk about? Remember this, gamer? Meet the Randonomicon 2. I don't know if there's a first one, maybe that's a reference to a previous game, but anyways, hailing straight from Spacey's dreams and desires comes a book that at the start of every battle gives Lamar a set of random skills pulled from all of his book skills he'd get from equipping the different books across the game. Yeah, baby, reactive randomness. I love it. But furthermore, extra new skills are also thrown into the mix, known as page skills, that can do a number of different things. Like, I remember one tripling Lamar's physical attacks and the like, just extra goofy stuff. This idea is really cool because we spent the game seeing all these abilities, and now we can use them together, including some skills that I never even got to use. It was exciting. Though sadly I kind of struggled to use this book, because the enemies were just too strong, and I was still playing on difficulty 3 out of 4. If I didn't play optimal, I was just going to lose. It kind of made me wonder on the debate, at what point does the challenge of harder difficulties strip away from the fun and versatilities of player choice and builds? Of course I could change the difficulty at any time, but I don't know, I just kind of didn't want to. Like what I said earlier, I feel like the fights were better on the harder difficulty, but I guess I wouldn't know because I never tried it on the normal difficulty. Also in Makio, there's some new battle themes that only play here, And y'all couldn't imagine my reaction walking around only to get jump scared by... Like, that caught me off guard, coming through with the yes. The story of Machio involves some super strong entity being sealed away, and despite all warnings, we continue to break all the seals leading to this entity. This creature is known as the mother's firstborn child, referring to the mother of the monster world. The final guardian of this being basically the Ultima Nautilus. Like, they have quote the Ultima weapon from Final Fantasy VI at the beginning of this. This is what I like about Machio. It just has this bizarre humor unlike the rest of the game that makes sense in a way that it doesn't. That we are clearly in a world of nonsensical illusions and beings. So it makes sense that silly stuff like this exists. Even to the Nautilus's nonchalant reaction to being defeated. This fight was really tough, with the boss getting stronger as turns went on. This is the only point of the game that I had to grind, and I'm still not sure if the levels did much. Like, by the end of this, everyone was level 50. But I had the XP up items on Dorothy throughout all of the Machio exploration, and she was like level 70 and still dying to everything. Upon beating the Nautilus, there's no more seals remaining. The firstborn is freed. This results in an alternate ending, where this new being just goes to the final boss and slaps up everyone. Well, I guess that's one way to do things. I like the part here where Alicia's like, wow, thanks. And they're just like, yeah, but watch this though. And epically pranks Alicia by destroying the planet. Well, now I feel bad. So y'all might be thinking that this is the end, but there's actually more to talk about. I decided to go back and fight the normal final boss again, because I wanted to go back to that dialogue box asking if I was content, because I thought that there was something I might be missing after that. Spoilers alert, that prompt doesn't ever come back. I suppose my hunger for more has left me with the punishment of eternal unsatisfiement. I almost don't want to show you all this because it's so cool, but I was fighting the final boss as normal. I mean, I thought that revenge status the boss was getting was strange, like, was that there before? I kinda just ignored it though. I mean, Miriam double turning and blessed bullets was demolishing regardless. So the final boss enters their final form as per usual, and oh, this caught me off guard so hard. Like, there was nothing telling me that this would happen. It's like by unleashing this creature I've permanently affected my save. Like, I wonder if my future playthroughs will be tainted as well. Anyways, this is the true final boss. Yeah, I had a fun time naming these clips. Really hard fight. I remember there was this one attack that just wiped me. And honestly, I was so tired, I basically said, yeah, I'm good. And finally broke by lowering the difficulty to 2 out of 4. This leads to a bit of a twist on the normal ending that I think is cute. This didn't have to exist, and I think it's cool that it does. But yeah, that's the end. Promise. Yeah, even with all this extra stuff, I still know that I haven't seen everything. Like, I still really want to replay this game with basically the low-key translation patch that can be unlocked. I feel like it'll completely shift the story for me. But furthermore, there were just some areas I missed out on. Like this one here in Machio has me really curious what's behind it. Like, golly gee, I bet it's the coolest thing ever. I couldn't get in because it's missing 2 items though. I heard there was a secret to be found in the bonus maze area that can be accessed in the end game, so one might be there. And I remember that there was this important looking area asking for 2 bones, but I only ever found 1. So I want to know what happens when I have the other. Also some Fool's Key equipment I missed out on. I was surprised that it seems like there was more Fool's chests than keys that could be obtained. But isn't that just the best kind of game though? One that y'all just want to replay after beating, see things that you all missed, and build characters differently. Like, with my knowledge now, I could make these characters busted. But anywho, I think it's time to wrap things up. That cool with y'all? Weird and unfortunate things are happening is just a solid fun time. It's games like these I love talking about, introducing me to all these cool gameplay ideas. I know I could have done my typical go through the plot instead of spending so long on the gameplay, but I wanted to express how cool all these ideas in this game are. I feel like there's a lot to be enjoyed for people when it comes to this game. I know with most horror RPGs, people just want to run around, solve puzzles, and get jump scared, but I like this recent age of horror RPGs with actual attempts at combat and ideas. Y'all can say it takes away from the scares considering our main characters can fight back, but I still feel some fear in some areas. I mean, at least in games like these, the combat and gameplay keeps me engaged enough to focus and be scared, rather than playing half awake in a game where I just run around, get lost, and solve odd puzzles. I'm not attacking any particular games, a taste for a taste, there's beauty with both. And I think it's cool to be able to see the love and passion for these games through the gameplay, and the spins it takes on familiar ideas to make itself unique. So yeah, of course I recommend y'all to play this game if it seems interesting to you. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this game and to support Unity on our other projects, because I'm sure those games got some rocking ideas as well. Unity has clearly proven to me that she knows what she's doing. Rock on. These words I speak presently are out of kindness, but I think it's cool to look back at Unity's earlier projects, seeing certain default stuff or using free to use music at points in Weird Hap, alongside sound effects from Sound Pack, which trust me, I know that last one because I recognize a lot of the sound effects here as ones that I used to. It's kind of surreal when that happens. What I'm trying to say is that RPG Maker and the like rule that people can jump in and create these games with their ideas, with worlds and stories that they can tell through it. People who grew up playing and loving these games now being able to make games that people can play and love all the same. So, I guess my message in the end is to keep doing what y'all love and keep loving the things that y'all are doing. I'm out of here.